Hello and welcome to Video Revealed. I'm Colin Smith. Let's talk about audio podcast production in Adobe Premiere Pro. I'm here at my summer beach house. Just kidding, it's my newest BELECO backdrop. Check out the Amazon link in the description. My wife picked the surfboard. I have been on a surfboard once in Maui. It didn't go well. All right. So you already know Premiere Pro as an application for video editing, but you might not know that it is also an application that can be used as a digital audio workstation, a DAW. And if you come from other video editing applications, they might not have the same kind of features. So if you already know Premiere Pro, you don't have to go to Audition or Logic or Pro Tools. You can do everything in here. Now, the first thing we need to do is record. And let me just play back the little podcast. I got together with my buddy Bill. We talked about alternate choices for movies we all know. And I put this together. So let's have a look. Got some opening music here. And I have a title here. Don't need it for audio, but I have it here just in case. And this calms down, and now we have an intro.
Our podcast today is going to be on the alternate casting that could have affected many of our iconic movie roles. Welcome to the movie show. For example, Colin, did you know that Lee Marvin was originally chose to play Quint in Jaws?
Okay, so what I recorded was I used the Lark M1, which is a couple of lapel mics. These are wireless digital microphones and the receiver. And I recorded this to my Ninja V. Now, if you've got an audio input into your computer, you can just plug this directly into your computer and record. It's best if you've got a better quality. I mean, if you've got multiple microphones for people, that's great. If you have an audio interface that's not on your computer, so if it's an external interface with multiple inputs, you can use that. I'll show you how to get to that in Premiere Pro. What I chose to do with the Lark M1 was to record in stereo mode. That means Bill is in one side, I'm in the other side. Now, I don't want to play it back that way because I think it's too... it just doesn't sound right when someone's talking and you have nothing in one ear and that person in the other ear. It doesn't work. The reason I record that way, even though I put both of us back in the middle, which I'll show you how to do in a second, it allows you to affect each signal separately. So if one of the signals was a little quieter, I could bump that up. If one of the signals had some noise, I could remove it. So it just makes sense if you can separate people. If you're used to recording podcasts now with 2, 3, or 4 people, however many people, Premiere Pro will support as many people as you want, and you can record them all if you have a separate interface. So I recorded them separate. You can also record directly into the timeline in Premiere Pro. I'll show you that too. Okay, so what I did is when I bring those clips, that audio clip, into Premiere Pro, you can see it's okay.
Well, it was that when they watched
It's 2 signals. And if you right-click on something after you've imported, go to Modify Audio Channels. When I bring this in from my Ninja V, it's one stereo recording with Bill on the left and me on the right. I changed this to mono, 2 channels. So now they're both in the center. And when you do this and you click OK, Premiere Pro will warn you that it can't change it can't change stuff that's in the timeline. Although there's a checkbox in the bottom to check at the timeline, it makes more sense for you to change this before you bring it into the timeline. So if you're recording something external, you can bring it in. If you had 2 separate mono clips, remember this is one clip with 2 channels in it. You could have 8 mono tracks and still work perfectly. So that's not a problem. I also have some sweetening on this too, but we'll get into that in a second. So what if you wanted to record directly into the timeline? Well, let's go create a new project. And by the way, this workspace that I'm working on is called Essentials. These are your workspaces here, Essentials. It's a new workspace. I just think it's more efficient than jumping between a bunch of different workspaces. It's up to you on how you want to work. Okay, I'm going to create a new sequence. And if you're doing audio, this part doesn't really matter, but I've just got it set on DSLR. And if you go to the tracks, here you can set up your tracks. And when you are setting them up, the difference really is between standard and mono. Forget the rest of these. Standard is stereo and mono. What I have right here is a standard track with a mono clip in it. You can have both into it. There are no stereo tracks. But I'm just going to leave this as is with a stereo mix track. That's formerly called a master. Now Adobe calls that mix. And I'll call this podcast. And I could name these here if I want. But let's say I forgot to name them here, and I'll show you where we can name them later. All right, so I've got a blank timeline. How do I record in the timeline? Well, in the Edit menu on Windows, Premiere Pro menu on the Mac, Preferences, Audio Hardware. This is where you tell Premiere Pro what your audio hardware is. And you might get different options here depending if you're on Mac or Windows. And you get to set up what your input is. And down at the bottom, it shows you the inputs that are available. When I set up Premiere Pro on my desktop solution over on the other side of my studio, I actually have 8 inputs on my Steinberg interface. And down at the bottom, it shows up with 8 separate inputs. So if I had 8 microphones, 8 people, 8 inputs, I could record 8 channels separately. Okay? But that's where you set that up. Very important. Now, you might go over here and try to grab one of these voiceover recording. That's not where you want to record. You want to record using the track mixer, which is hidden by default. If you go to the window menu, under here, there's the clip mixer. You want to go to the track mixer, and we're in the podcast. So it shows up over here. You could drag this wherever you want. I could drag this over here. I could drag this, even if you've got a second monitor, you could drag this into a giant mixing window if you wanted to. So let's just have a quick look at the mixer. You have pan controls, you have volume controls, and there's the mix control. And you notice the names down here. So if I forgot to name them when I was making them, I can name them here. So this is Bill, and this is me, and this is music. Okay, you don't have to name them, but when you record into the timeline, if you've named them, the actual clip names will be based on this name. Ah, so that's useful. Okay, now the number of these is based on the number of tracks I have. If you right-click down here, you can add tracks. You can add track. And what this does is it adds another track identical to the settings. So this is a standard track, and it would make a standard track. All right. Up at the top, this is our output. So it's going out to the mix. Yes, we can have submixes. We're not going to talk about that. Right above that, this gray area here are the inputs. It's easy to miss this. And they're not turned on until you turn this button on for recording. Set these to armed. That's what they call it. You're arming it. You're getting ready for that track to be recorded. It's not recording yet. This is where you can select as many as you want. So I'm going to choose those, and this is where you would pick the inputs. So if you had 8 inputs, you would pick them from there. Remember, that only shows up when you're record enabled. Okay. So they're record enabled. We're at the beginning of the timeline here. If we want to start recording here, we could do that. Maybe we're going to drop in music. You need to do 2 things. You need to click this button here, and then hit the play button, and then you'll be recording. So I'm going to, and you'll see over here, it will let me know that it's recording. Okay, so I'm recording, and now I'm recording into my Ninja V, so there's a chance I might get some echo in here, which you normally wouldn't get. Oh, and it's very, very loud. Okay. Okay, so I recorded all of those tracks here, and if we go to our, so see how it named it, Bill and Colin. So it's created 2 files. It's very important for you to know where those files are. In the File menu, Project Settings, Scratch Disks, this is where captured audio is going, same as project. So and we can change that. If you want that in a different location, I highly suggest you keep everything together in the project. If you right-click on that and reveal an Explorer on Windows or the Finder on Mac, you'll actually see that it's in there. So if we go up a level, it's created this captured audio folder for me automatically. So all you have to do is say same as project. So that's how I record. If I want to continue recording over here, I could do that, go back to my audio track mixer, enable, and hit go, and I'll be recording from there. Okay? So that's really useful. I'm not going to use these. And I'll take this off record. And I'll drag our clip in. So I'm going to get rid of these. Okay. All right. It thinks I still want to record. I don't want to record. Okay, this is... All right, so I was setting things up there a little bit. Right. Give me an intro. Go.
Okay.
Okay.
Welcome to our discussion, our podcast today. It's going to be on the alternate casting that could have affected many of our iconic movie roles.
All right, so the recording I have here is very flat. There's not a lot of dynamics to this. You want to punch it up. I'm going to show you a really easy way to do it, and that's using the Essential Sound panel that has built-in automated controls to take things like a podcast audio track and bump it up. Okay, so what you do is you select the track and then look for Essential Sound. If you go to the audio workspace, it already shows up, but like I said, I like the Essentials workspace. And it still has Essential Sound. And what you need to do is assign a tag. So I only have the audio selected, and I'll click Dialogue. As soon as you do that, you tell Premiere Pro that everything in that clip is dialogue. And then you get some choices. So again, I'll play this back. Hanks.
You know what? You're stumping me on.
So let's look at some of the choices. Right at the bottom is podcast voice. And now let's listen to it.
On that one, because I didn't realize that it's possible.
And then there's another one that I like better, and that's balanced male voice. And it works for me because both of us have male voices.
Would have stunk so bad.
Well, here's something. Speaking about Travolta, and this one I bet you did.
So that is punching out much more. Now, what's happening in the background is all of these effects are being added. So if we go back to our effects controls, here's a little tip. See how these are all open? If you hold Alt on Windows, Option on Mac, and click in the first triangle, it closes all of them. So each one of these channels has the vocal enhancer, graphic EQ, dynamics processing, de-esser on them to give that sound.
You remember the last detail?
Yes.
Jack Nicholson. And he's
Okay, but that sounds fantastic. We could be happy with that. Now, if you wanted to add music, let me just move this down and go back to our music, and I'll drag that in. Just double clicking on here opens that up. And we've got our music. Now I could just trim this if I like, but I like that the music does this.
Tell you, it would work.
Well, you know, the big thing I think
it ends. So I'll grab my remix tool, click on the end, and drag it just around where Bill starts talking. So now it starts from the intro, but then it goes to...
welcome to our discussion podcast today. It's going to be on the alternate casting.
Okay, so that works out. Now, what if you wanted to duck? If your audio is only an intro and an outro music, I think it's better for you to add keyframes because you're only talking about keyframes. Trying to use the automated ducking controls in Premiere Pro for just an intro and an out is it's a pain. It has to generate keyframes. It's hard to change. This is 2 keyframes. Let me show you that really quick. So zoom in here. I'm hitting the plus, and you have the regular selection tool. So this is the arrow tool. If you hold the control key on Windows, command on Mac, and click, you'll add a keyframe. When you carefully click once, you haven't changed it. This is still at the volume it was. So go past there, click another one, and then turn this one down.
Welcome to our discussion podcast today. It's going to be...
See, it's so much quicker.
Welcome to our discussion podcast today. It's going to be on the...
And if you want, you could right-click on there and change these to different keyframes. And you can actually have little handles on here. So how you want that to fade.
Welcome to our discussion podcast today. It's going to be on the...
So I'll have another tutorial on the ducking because Adobe has updated the ducking. It's actually better in Audition. It's more dynamic. You have to generate hard keyframes in Premiere Pro. And the ducking is better if you want like a music bed underneath the whole thing. I think there's 2 schools of thought. If you're going to have an interview, my attitude is to do what the professionals do, and they don't have music going on behind it. I know young people tend to like to have music in everything. You can't turn on a radio and hear a traffic report without having, Questlove beat in the back of a traffic report. I don't understand that. And whatever. Okay, so that's adding music, trimming that up, and we've got that going just like that. All right. Now, you might have noticed in this one, I actually had a graphic in here. You don't have to have this, but here's the deal. Sometimes you're exporting out an audio-only podcast to some kind of service that accepts video files, but it's kind of iffy on audio. Like some social media sites won't accept MP3s. They just won't allow it at all. So I have to end up making a video file that's really the audio file. So very simple. I just have a graphic in here that I created for my fake show. And it's just a Photoshop file called The Movie Show. All right.
Yeah. I'm a mess, right?
Okay. The other thing you might notice is...
in that wonderful scene where he's kind of baptized by the...
So here we have subtitles. I think this is useful to take advantage of now having a video frame. Why don't we put that in there? There's 2 really good uses for having text. One is it's searchable. So if this is a long podcast and you're trying to remember where somebody talked about a certain thing, you can search. All right, let's do that. Go back to our file, and we're still in the essentials. And if I go to text and transcribe this sequence, I get to pick the language that I'm transcribing, and I'm picking the audio on the mix. So I'm going to mute the music first before I do that. So the mix with both. And honestly, I'm not going to recognize different speakers. The reason was because my buddy Bill does impersonations. When he's doing different actors like Marlon Brando and Martin Sheen, the transcript actually thought there was more than 2 people. So I'm going to leave that off. So click transcribe. Now this transcription is actually local. When Adobe first introduced this, it actually sent this out to the cloud, but this is happening on my machine, which means it just happens faster. the whole dictionary of the language that I have, which is English, and you could download other dictionaries. It's going to do that transcription here. I'll speed this up. All right, it's done, just like that. And by default, the auto scrolling is turned on. So when I hit,
the name of the show is The Movie Show, so I'll take your intro. Okay. So I just want you to say welcome.
A drunk blackout. I mean, come on. We've all experienced that, haven't we?
So if you want to search for something, up here I'll search for Godfather, and there it is.
Godfather.
Wow.
I became a supporting.
So even if you don't turn this into closed captions or subtitles, just having this available to search and to jump and to navigate is great. But if we want, we can turn this into captions. I'll click Create Captions. I'll create it from the transcript, and I'll just use a regular subtitle and click Create. Now it's making the captions, and there they are. So if we zoom in, each one is captioned.
Wow.
I became a supporting actor.
Okay.
So anyway.
Another one of my favorites, they actually recorded for a while. They shot with Harvey Keitel, which is Apocalypse Now.
All right, so there you go. If I didn't have to stop and explain it, I bring in my audio, make it sound better, add some music, and I could add sound effects and other kinds of stuff. Drop in a graphic, transcribe, captions. Now let's export it out. So in the export mode, we could export this out as high quality H.264. But if you wanted to, you could go to an audio only and you'll see the graphic will disappear. We don't have a preview. Or a better choice would be MP3. You go to more presets, look for MP3. There's various MP3. There's 256 kilobits. And of course, if we add this, if we go to audio, you could change this to 320 if you wanted. You could change the codec from fast to high, all of those types of things. And to get the captions in there, we'll go back to our H.264. And you can see the captions are they'll be burned in. They're actually not separate captions. But that's another way to export this out with the graphic preview or just as an audio-only file. So there you go. You might not think of Premiere Pro as being a DAW, a digital audio workstation, but it sure is. Can support any kind of input interface, multiple imports, multiple track recording at the same time. All of that audio sweetening and audio goodness. Hey, if you're new to Video Revealed and you found this informative, take a moment to subscribe. Till next time, I'm Colin Smith. It's my job to let you know that you don't have to learn a new application because maybe the one you already use for video can also be used for audio.